There we go. Well, welcome back. We're on the Connor and Mark show, and we're here with Tyler O'Shea. He's a founder of Joker Mag, and you can subscribe to his newsletter on Joker Mag. Also follow him on Twitter and Instagram. I can find it, on Twitter and Instagram at Joker Mag HQ on Twitter and Joker Mag HQ on Instagram as well. Tyler, again, thanks for coming on. I know we had some technical difficulties beforehand, but I think we got it out of the way now.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're good. No time restraint on this one, so we'll just hop into it real quick. Tyler, thanks for coming on, man. And before we start, I know you said you're a huge baseball fan. Just if you don't mind, just giving us a little background of your involvement in baseball and your sports, love for the game as well.
Yeah, so baseball was my main sport my whole life. My dad raised me and my brother that way. I know a lot of people don't specialize in sports. I kind of wish I played other sports, but baseball was my first love. Ended up playing all the way through college at McDaniel College in Westminster, Maryland, in the Centennial Conference. Had a lot of fun. Had a lot of good seasons. My junior year, we were like the best team in school history, which was pretty cool. But a lot of those guys are still my best friends. So baseball has been really good to me, and we'll get into it later. But baseball is kind of how I came up with the idea for my website.
Yeah, so kind of jumping into your website now, as we mentioned, you're the founder of Joker Mag, and if I'm not wrong, it's November of 2017.
Yep.
It's been around since. So about 2.5 years now. And just where did the idea for Joker Mag really originate, and how did it really get all going?
So back in 7th grade, as I was mentioning earlier, I got cut from the baseball team. I was always undersized growing up. I was really small. I was crow hopping from shortstop, still was bouncing throws to first base. The -3 bats on the big field would swing me. So I got cut from the team, wasn't good enough. And from that day, I made a decision that I'm going to stick with baseball. I'm going to keep pursuing my dream and just play as long as I can. And the one thing that really helped me was looking to other guys that have done it before me, guys like David Eckstein, Tim Lincecum, Dustin Pedroia, all the undersized baseball players that ended up going pro. They were always told that they couldn't do it. And those type of stories inspired me a lot in my career. And I thought, why not build a place where we can just have those stories for people and be a source of inspiration for other people going through adversity.
Definitely.
Yeah, and going back to Joker Mag and starting out with it, I know that me and Mark, who are obviously just getting into this business with podcasting, writing, and stuff like that. What were some of the bumps along the way when you started out that you had to overcome with learning new, learning how to write and podcast, stuff like that?
Yeah, the biggest thing was definitely just learning all the technology, WordPress, different stuff like that, all the stuff, even like just the best way to format tweets and like social media posts to try to get people to actually read your stuff. And then another big thing was just having the right expectations. Like you think all your friends and family are going to support you, but that's obviously not going to always be the case. They could be hot on it right away, but when it first comes out, when the hype's building up, but are they going to stick with you? You need like people that are actually passionate about it. You need to go after the right people, like your aunt and uncle, whatever, aren't going to always be passionate about the same things that you're passionate about. So you got to find your audience, and it takes a lot of time. So that was one of the main things, was setting the right expectations for myself and not getting too disappointed, not obsessing over numbers and page views and listeners and stuff like that. And just kind of focusing on the content.
Yeah, and going back to more passion and kind of the underdog story for yourself. I know we mentioned we had some technical difficulties, but you said an awesome story about starting out on the D3 baseball team and not really getting a shot by being on the practice squad. But I would love for you to share the story of how you came to be a full-time starter and how that came to be, because it's funny, but it's also very inspiring to people and gives you good reason of why you did start this website.
Yeah. So it was always my dream to play college baseball, and I was recruited by McDaniel College in Maryland, as I said earlier, out of high school. And when I got there after fall ball my freshman year, I was put on the practice squad, which I didn't even know existed. I thought, you're recruited, my coach told me, you're going to have a guaranteed spot on the team, and that obviously didn't end up being the case. So I was put on the practice team, didn't travel with the team anywhere, didn't even have a uniform or a jersey number or anything. So I basically just practiced with the team a couple days a week, and that was it. That was the extent of my involvement. And then before the last doubleheader of the season, our starting left fielder, who's actually one of my good friends now, struck out and punched the bench and broke his hand. So the team needed an extra outfielder, so they moved me to the outfield and called me up, and I finally got a jersey. I was like number 39 or something. I was like the fourth string left fielder or right fielder or whatever. And so that was my freshman season of baseball. And then my sophomore year, we needed a guy to play third base when our third baseman pitched. He was like the best player in McDaniel history. He was a pitcher and third baseman, Marty Windish, set all kinds of records. He's one of my good friends as well. So I was playing third base when he was pitching one day at Johns Hopkins, ended up hitting a big home run. And ever since then, I was in the starting lineup. And by my senior year, I was named honorable mention all conference, which was really cool. But just being around those guys, being around this team, we built like such a great culture of, I don't know how to explain it, but our culture was like really strong and really tight knit group of guys. And a lot of them are still my closest friends to this day. So like I was saying to you guys earlier, for your listeners, I would highly recommend sticking with it. I guess that's the lesson I get from my story, besides the whole underdog thing, is just stick with things, be persistent, and it'll pan out for you.
Yeah, and just going towards your podcast, Hustle and Motivate. That's a podcast we get to talk to a lot of people inside sports and outside sports who've overcome in their life. Are there certain stories that have really taken you aback and really maybe changed your outlook on just life in general and sports?
Yeah, the one I would say was a guy by the name of Raymond Power, who is now a professional actor, but growing up he was in foster homes, bouncing around, didn't really have a home, didn't really have any type of parental figures in his life, and ended up falling into gang life, joined a gang, was in and out of prison, and ended up one day in some type of gang dispute, and a guy shot him and his cousin, shot him in the leg 4 times. He ended up in the hospital, and that was kind of when he decided to make a change in his life, and went back to school, had a child, went to college. Now I think he has multiple college degrees, and now he's a professional actor out in Seattle, which it was one of the craziest stories I've ever heard.
Pretty crazy turnaround. That's insane. And like you said, it's pretty cool that you guys touch on stories, outside of sports, because there's a lot of underdog things that, underdog stories that take place that, don't pertain to sports, and things like you're talking about that are bigger than life. So, I think that's really cool. And moving into your other podcasts, as we mentioned, you guys have 2 podcasts, Hustle and Motivate, and then Sneaky Plays as well. I was really interested to really understand what that's more about. I know on the previous one you said it doesn't run. I mean, it does run outside of football season, so it's not just pertaining to football season. But what kind of is that about, and who kind of runs that and puts that all in play?
Yeah, my good friend Brian Cantino, former teammate of mine at McDaniel College, he's the main host of Sneaky Plays, sorry. And it started out as a DraftKings under the radar type picks, and that's kind of what they stuck with. And then they've branched out now to basketball, baseball talk, and stuff like that in the off season. So it's been really good, and like I told you guys earlier, they've been hitting pretty good on their under the radar picks. They always try to pick the underpriced guys at each position each week, and we do a write up. We put it out on the website, and we've gotten really good feedback, and a lot of people have followed their advice and won a little bit of money on DraftKings. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, and like I asked earlier before, with sports gambling becoming such a big thing in sports culture today, is that something you guys want to move forward to, or do you guys like the lane that you guys are in right now?
Yeah, I really like the lane we're in right now. Obviously, sports betting is a way that a lot of people are monetizing their media brands. So it's something that I'm open to, but I'm really into just the underdog theme, hitting it hard and just telling these stories. And I think Sneaky Plays obviously still fits into the underdog brand because it's under the radar guys, underpriced guys on DraftKings, guys that you're really not expecting to do well. So I like where we're at.
Nice. So now, kind of jumping back into your podcast, Hustle and Motivate, and the point of Hustle and Motivate, or kind of the way that it runs, is a documentary type style. For the listeners who don't know, with real life experience, and as you mentioned, you've had people of all walks in life, but one of the, I guess, more entertaining and funnier underdog stories, and the guy brought a lot of humor to it, was Detroit prospect. Or Detroit Tigers prospect, Robert Kilchuk. I know I'm
Clinchock, yeah.
Clinchock. What was that like? Just kind of describe that experience and what it was kind of like talking to a guy like that.
Yeah, I actually met him up at Westchester through my girlfriend, and I started talking to him one night, and he was just telling me all these funny stories. I was like, yo, you got to come on the podcast and tell these stories. So Robbie was one of 9 Division III players taken in the 2019 MLB draft. And I think he was one of only 2 of those Division III players to get called up from rookie ball to single A or to low A that season, in his first season. So it was really cool to have him on. And some of the stories, obviously, like you said, were really funny. My favorite was definitely the one at the end that he told about the baked beans giveaway. I don't know if you heard that part.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was a good one.
It was great. I was laughing my ass off. I listened to it about 10 times and I'm still laughing. But it's just so funny. I would recommend your listeners at least go listen to that story. It's like the last 5 minutes of that episode, but really good stuff. And it's been really cool to just connect with people like him.
Yeah, and real quick, I just meant to ask, because out of curiosity, where is it Shenandoah, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Shenandoah, yeah. I think it's
Shenandoah.
in Virginia. Yeah.
Okay. So would they like play against a team like you guys, or is it kind of part of that conference?
They played against Johns Hopkins, who was always like the top of our conference, and they played against them in regionals, and I think he actually pitched against them.
That's pretty awesome.
But yeah.
And going back to Joker Mag, do you guys have anything coming up new with the website? Anything that you kind of want to, start looking into with, podcasting or writing?
Yeah, we actually just I'm starting to get into more like video stuff a little bit. I'm experimenting with it. So we just put out a video about Buster Douglas's upset of Mike Tyson's first loss. And it was actually a great story. Buster Douglas's mother passed away right before the fight, and he ended up upsetting Mike Tyson, knocked him out in the 10th round. So that was really cool. We got great feedback on that. So that's something I'm thinking about, is making a little bit more motivational type of video stories.
Yeah, that's a good one, because I remember I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about Buster Douglas, who's actually like a really good boxer, but he had trouble like staying in line and training. But obviously, when his mother died, he kind of like went straight on narrow during that time right before his Mike Tyson fight, and I think it was like 42-1 odds or something like that, something crazy, and he like overcame that and had a huge win. So I mean, that's one of best boxing stories in my opinion.
For sure. I'm not a big boxing fan. I just love, like you guys know, I love these underdog stories, and that was one of the best I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm not for that too. I'm not a big boxing guy. I was actually I was watching Frazier and Ali the other day, so definitely some. If you're sitting around the house looking for something to watch, you're a sports fan, definitely recommend some old time boxing. I don't really think it is the same as it is today. So, and now just shifting gears, kind of wrapping up here, and thank you again for coming on and doing this, and definitely we love learning about your website and stuff like that, but you've had a lot of people on, as we spoke about, sports and not sports, but what's kind of a story that's really either an article or a podcast that's really resonated with you or even had an effect on your life?
The favorite one that comes to mind was Jim Morris, who Disney's The Rookie was made about. Jim Morris was a 35-year-old high school science teacher. He was also a baseball coach, and his players convinced him to try out for the MLB. He went out to this tryout not expecting much. Turns out he was throwing like low 90s, mid 90s, and got signed by the Tampa Bay Devil Rays and ended up in the MLB by that September. So really cool interview. He was one of my childhood heroes ever since I saw the movie, and it was just really cool to be able to hear the story in his own words.
Yeah, and I'll wrap up with one more question. I heard you're a big baseball fan, and obviously, you must be pissed about the season being suspended with everything going on. Are you a Phillies fan, or is that?
Yeah, I'm a Phillies fan. All Phillies sports.
Talking about the Phillies a little bit, and obviously they bring in Didi Gregorius and Zach Wheeler. Do you still think this team is on the outside looking in on the playoffs, or do you think that they've made enough moves to maybe push towards a wild card spot?
I don't know. I think it comes down to the starting pitching, and I think you need Jake Arrieta to step up. You need Wheeler to be who he can be. I think their offense will be all right. I like Girardi a lot. So we'll see. I think McCutcheon's going to come back strong. He seems like he's ready to go. Obviously, Didi Gregorius. I love Gene Segura. You need guys like Hoskins and Scott Kingery to continue to progress. And we could have a shot at the division, but we'll see. I don't know. Depends when baseball comes back, but I'm excited for the Phillies.
Yeah, and kind of sticking with the Phillies a little bit. In terms of prospects, I know the two biggest prospect names right now for the Phillies are Alec Boehm and Spencer Howard. I mean, what do you think about those guys? And do you see a timetable of them coming up to the Phillies and producing anytime soon? I mean, when baseball does resume, of course.
Yeah, I don't know much about what's the second guy's name? Spencer Howard?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a pitcher in Double-A now, maybe Triple-A now. I mean,
and Alec Boehm. I thought he was going to be MLB ready by this season, but they said they were going to start him out in the minors. So we'll see. I don't know. I would love for him to come up and exceed expectations like we had Franco, and even like I think it was Cody Ashe who was supposed to be a big time prospect back in the day, and like our prospects never really pan out the way we want them to, besides like Aaron Nola. So I'm hoping that one of these guys pops and does well. So we'll see.
And I'll ask one more Phillies question. With Rhys Hoskins, he's coming off a pretty bad year. Second half of the year was pretty awful. Do you still have high hopes for what he can become as a power hitter, or do you think that maybe moving on from him, not now obviously because the season's not underway, but in the near future could be a possibility?
I think we as Philly fans overreact too much. I think that was one season, and I think there was a lot of pressure on him. Obviously, Harper was in the lineup to help him, but I just think it was a little bit of a down year, and they keep changing hitting coaches and stuff like that. So I think if he has some consistency, he's still pretty young. How old is he? Like 27, 26?
Right.
Yeah, around there.
So I think you got to stick with him. I think you got to stick with him because I don't think you're going to get max trade value out of him now after last season.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's a guy. He's a bred Phillies guy. He's a prospect that came up through the system, if I'm not mistaken. So I definitely agree with you in that regard. I think we should keep him and let him kind of pan out. I didn't think he had a bad first half of the season. I thought his second half was just so terrible that it overshadowed any production in the first half. So I think the Phillies are in a very tough division for the most part, but I think you're right. Pitching is really going to be the key factor and the pivotal factor for them to make the playoffs. But now shifting to the big event Thursday night, and sports fans are really chomping at the bit for any kind of entertainment pertaining to live telecast sports and anything for that matter. That's going to be the NFL draft. And as we mentioned, Thursday we're going to have a draft show just covering the first round and going by our mock drafts, what you can view on our Instagram page. But I kind of want to get, your thoughts on the draft. Any guys you're keeping an eye on, any teams you're really looking at to maybe make a move or a splash for that matter?
I'm really curious to see what the New England Patriots are going to do. Obviously, today they just traded Rob Gronkowski, who's apparently coming out of retirement. But I want to see what they do with the quarterback position and stuff like that. And obviously the Eagles. I hear all these rumors about them trading up, so we'll see. I would like for that to happen, but it's got to be for the right player and stuff like that. I'm hoping we get a big time receiver.
Yeah, and real quick, just building off the Patriots point, because I'm really interested in that. Do you see them going with a guy like Jordan Love, or do you see them doing their Patriots way, where they sit back to the later rounds and try to take a diamond in the rough?
I think Belichick is kind of like stubborn. I think he might stick to his ways and try to find a diamond in the rough, like you said, or maybe sign a free agent or something that's still out there. I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah, I am too, because I know there's all this hype, and there's 4, really good NFL ready quarterbacks according to 5 if you include Jacob Eason, but 4, according to Mel Kiper and Todd McShay. So, they even picked a quarterback in the second round is the highest, and that was Garoppolo. So, I'm interested to see what they do as well.
Yeah, and I'll ask you about this because before we had the interview, you talked about you knew some prospects in this upcoming draft who've had an underdog story and an upbringing like that. What kind of prospects were you talking about, and what kind of story were they at?
Yeah, we actually have a pinned Twitter thread on our Twitter page at Joker Mag HQ. I'll just touch on a few of them. Henry Ruggs, obviously, he's a guy that a lot of Eagles fans have been talking about. I don't know if we're going to be able to get him, but he's got a great story. He was a 5'9" high school basketball player, had no interest in playing football. His best friend, who ended up passing away in a car accident, tragically, he actually convinced him to play football. He said, you'll be a 5-star recruit if you commit to football. So eventually he convinced him, and it wasn't until his junior year that he started playing football. And it turned out his friend was right. Obviously went to Alabama. Now he's a top 10, top 15 draft pick in the draft. And then there's like a guy like Joe Burrow, who is going to be number 1 overall, but he actually spent 3 years at Ohio State, couldn't win the starting job. Obviously had a lot of competition there. And Urban Meyer actually told him, I don't know if it was to motivate him or what, but he told him, you throw like a girl, you're a Division II quarterback, you can't handle this level of football, whatever. So obviously he proved all the doubters wrong with spectacular senior season. Now he's going to be number 1 overall. And my favorite one that I just came across was a guy by the name of Javon Kinlaw, who's the, I guess, number 1 or number 2 ranked defensive tackle in this draft. He was actually homeless growing up and spent 1 year in JUCO football. Came to South Carolina weighing 350 pounds and had to bust his ass to cut down 30 pounds and become an NFL prospect. Now he's a potential top 10 pick. So all the way from a homeless child to now going to be a multimillionaire in the NFL. Just pretty cool to see all these different types of stories.
Yeah, I agree, and I remember reading up on a story a couple years ago with Eagles cornerback Rasul Douglas. I think he was playing JUCO football. Like before he went to where did he go to school? I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but
Was it West Virginia?
West Virginia, yes. So I think before that he was playing JUCO football. I think he was living in his car or something like that. So it's interesting to see that these people go from like such, they were almost homeless and now they're, about to sign like a multi-million-dollar deal to play football. So it's great to see these guys, overcome these obstacles in life and become, football players.
For sure.
Yeah, and kind of wrapping up now here. I mean, I gotta, you're a Philly sports fan, and I got to get your pick. Who do you think, if the Eagles do not trade, considering all things, not trading up or down, sitting at that 21 spot? I'm pretty sure it's 21. Staying put where they are. Who do you see them taking?
I hope we can get Justin Jefferson. I've heard a lot of great things about him. I hope he falls to us, and I hope we can get him at 21. I think he could be a great player for us, especially if we're keeping Jeffrey in the mix. He could be a good number 2 opposite him. So we'll see. What do you guys think?
Mark, do you want to start?
I mean, I know I'm gonna get shot after this one, but I really think the wide receiver class is just really deep. I really don't think we should trade up or down. I just don't think we have the assets or the draft picks in place to really give up and still be a stable team. I really would like to take a linebacker in the first round, either Patrick Queen or Kenneth Murray. Queen out of LSU and Murray out of Oklahoma. I think, linebackers have one of the highest percentage success rates in the NFL. So I think the Eagles really need to address that position. I think Nathan Gary's the only linebacker. So I think if you get a guy like Queen, especially out of SEC, I think he's someone you can build on for the secondary or for the middle linebacker crew for that matter.
Yeah, and we alluded to earlier with Adam Kaplan works for ESPN, and he was talking about that, if they don't take a wide receiver in the first round, he thinks they're going to go cornerback or edge rusher, which is, obviously surprising. Looking like linebacker is a big hole on the defense. They may go, cornerback with A.J. Terrell, who's someone who's rising up to, his stock, or maybe someone like Clavon Chasen or, other guys like that, on the edge. So I don't know. It seems like a lot of different possibilities can go on. If they stay at 21, I like to think they'll go wide receiver. So I'll make a guess. I'll say they'll go Jalen Reagor or they'll go Brandon Ayuk from ASU. thought they get a speed guy. So that I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen though. So that's the thing.
Yeah, I think this draft's one of the most anticipated drafts, just with the wide receiver talent and the teams at the top of the draft where their needs lie. Like I could see a Detroit trading back. However, I did make a hot take that the Detroit Lions will pick Tua with the third pick. So, I think it's a possibility. So, I mean, we'll see. There's a lot of possibilities in the draft and a lot of trades that can happen. So, I think that just about wraps up the interview. Tyler, thanks again, man, for coming on. And before we let you go, would you want to talk about anything with the website Joker Mag, any articles, podcasts you would like anybody to, look out for, or any projects coming up?
Yeah, well, first, thank you guys so much for having me on. I mean, this podcast is awesome. I've checked out your guys' other ones before.
Thanks,
I think
man.
the bright future ahead of you is for sure. I guess the one thing I would tell your listeners is subscribe to the Underdog newsletter. We send out a newsletter once a week, running down the best underdog stories in sports, not just from us, from all over the internet. I dig them up. I love these stories. So I find a little bit of everything from all over the internet. So subscribe. You can go to jokermag.com/newsletter and enter your email in there and sign up. And thanks again for having me on, fellas.
Yeah, of course, man. So, like Tyler said, we'll, check out the newsletter. We'll list all the platforms, social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, obviously the website, and how to check out that newsletter. And yeah, definitely if you're listening, definitely look at the website. As I mentioned, it's very user friendly and appealing to navigate. So a lot of great content and the podcast as well on there. So without further ado, I mean, thanks again for coming on and definitely look to connect soon for sure.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys. Good.
Mark, you gotta stop recording.
Oh, yeah,
Mark.
I know, I'm looking. Going on.
Bottom right.